Right, so without further ado, I'm going to get going on the introductions. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining Strauss & Company this afternoon. And we're here with our second installment of Museum Moments. Museum Moments designed to, I suppose, open up spaces that are often neglected in the public imagination. Museums being quiet places of reflection and seen as repositories for art, they are very much living and breathing institutions. So I would like to, it gives me great pleasure today to welcome Mr. Christopher Till and Ms. Shanaz Mohammed of the newly opened Javett Art Center at the University of Pretoria. And Christopher, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Finally.
Fantastic. How are you today?
Very good. Thank you.
Good, sir. Thank you so much for joining us, Christopher. And I suppose I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And so Shanaz can just take over from here. Let me just allow that to happen. Super duper. There we go, Shanaz. It's all over to you. And so, Christopher, I think as a beginning, as a sort of an introduction, tell us a little bit about the Javett Art Center and when it officially opened. It's a brand spanking new institution, and give us a little bit of insight as to, because I know it's been in the going for a couple of years, and we're going to see some of the construction pictures.
Yes, well, Matthew, the Javett Art Center is the most extraordinary and wonderful collaboration between the Javett Foundation, which is a philanthropic and educational institution foundation, and the University of Pretoria. And the seed of that came through the intervention of Stefan Welz in discussion with Michael Javett, who is the head of the Javett Foundation, and his collection, which was the catalyst to start this entire thing off. That led to discussions with ultimately the University of Pretoria and Professor Melk at the time, who was there. And after a protracted period of negotiation, it was finally decided to site the Javett on the South Campus, which is a thin strip of land on this, as the name implies, on the south side. And if you're looking at the slide now, that is where the main building is at the top of the picture. And a bridge gallery crosses Linwood Road, which is a main road running east to west in Pretoria, and sets down at the bottom of that image onto a new square, which links the building on the top left, on the bottom left, which is the Department of Architecture and the Visual Arts, which is not in picture. So this building took some years to get together, in the sense of a negotiation for everything from air rights to you name it, to get it through all the hurdles that one has to in putting a building like this together. The architects are Matthews and Associates, Peter Matthews and Associates in Pretoria, and they've done an incredible job of creating this complex which straddles the road. So it physically straddles it, as you can see in these pictures, the early bridge structure going across the road. And on top of that was built the bridge gallery, which you'll see in subsequent pictures coming up. There it is on the right. The design that you see in the concrete was taken from shweshwe cloth. The architects used that motif. And the structure you can see on your left, poking up, that sort of hexagonal concrete structure, houses the gold collections, which we'll speak about earlier on. So that collaboration between a university and a private foundation has created the Javett Art Center, and that in itself is a trust with an independent board of trustees with representatives both from the university and the Javett Foundation, as well as independent trustees managing and overseeing this extraordinary structure. The building here, that is the concrete structure I spoke about, which houses the gold, which we'll get to in a minute. And the main entrance is on your left. This obviously was in the construction phase. and I'm not sure what this next slide is. Shanaz is in charge of this. So there are a couple of structural pictures here. That is the completed bridge. We are now on the side of the main university campus, and those stairs go up onto the side of this gallery space. So the earlier picture that you saw with all of those wonderful shadows is the actual bridge, which is a pedestrian bridge, but this is a gallery that goes across to the other side. Let's go on, Shinaz. Okay, that's just a picture of the construction coming up. And I think this is the image of the Vice Chancellor of the University, Professor Coupe, and Dr. Lee Bregman of the Javett Foundation, with Dr. Conrad Strauss in the background, who was our first chairman of the board and very instrumental in assisting in getting this whole thing on the road. And it was opened on Heritage Day on the 24th of September with a series of exhibitions which we're going to speak about today. Right, next one. Okay, so the first collection that we're showing here is a lone collection of some 250 gold artifacts which belong to Anglo Gold Ashanti. I originally put this together in a museum in Cape Town, in the Gold of Africa Museum, where it remained for a number of years. Ultimately, that museum had to close, and the gold went back to Anglo Gold Ashanti and was in storage for a couple of years before we were able to persuade them to lend that collection back to us, which is now housed in that concrete structure that I showed you. It is a collection of mainly all West African gold artifacts and objects, which really tell the story of the power of the kings, of royalty, of power and wealth, and are adornments of the wealthy class and kingship in West Africa. As you go into the building, into the gallery, there is this timeline which we created, which shows not only a timeline of the world, but underneath it a timeline of the gold, which sets the approach into the jewel box of that collection as it glows in the dark, which is really quite a spectacular sight. Shinaz? One of the pieces, the Golden Lion, I mean, that probably weighs somewhere in the region of about 2.5 kilograms, and that it's gold. And so it's a wonderfully iconic piece, which, as I've said, is part of the entourage of royalty. And the lion, of course, as a zoomorphic figure, is a figure of strength. There's a little piece of a pangolin. So the stories of kingship are related to the zoomorphic articulation of these creatures in gold, and of course then designs for things like necklaces and so on. So it's the most extraordinary collection. These are bracelets which click open to put the wrist through it, and then click close again, and I say adorn the arms of kings and people of wealth. Then I think the next few pictures are of the other gold collection that we have. This is the constructing of a showcase that we put together in the upper floor of that concrete space, which houses the gold of Mapungubwe, which has been at the university for many years in the old arts building. And the gold collection has been brought into that concrete space on the upper floor. And here is the Mapungubwe gold collection with the rhino centrally placed. You can see him next to that glass column. And of course, the most famous artifact of that is the golden rhino, which is also there. So it's a wonderful collection of African gold, because that is at the heart of the Javett Foundation, the Javett Art Center's raison d'etre. We want to be a place and a space of where the art of Africa is explored, it's collected, it's exhibited, it's conserved, and we want to understand what that African signature can be and how it articulates itself in creativity, not only on this continent, but elsewhere. Then this is one of the main opening exhibitions, which is 101 Collecting Conversations, Signature Works of a Century. And the team, which we'll introduce in a minute, looked at how we could produce an exhibition which would appeal broadly to a visiting public and could potentially be described as popular. Well, what is popular? And everybody wants their exhibitions to be popular, but this was an idea which I had, which was to approach the collections in this country and ask for nominations of works which we could consider. A process followed where we received a large number of suggested works, but it took a while of negotiating, going forward and backwards to finally get the collection together. Shinaz, you might want to comment on that in how we approached those collections and how many works we finally had to choose from.
Yeah, so our initial strategy was that we were going to contact as many institutions as possible. And, you know, we sort of said, dream big, and then we can narrow it down to a concise selection. It was quite a big task. I think we just contacted institutions across South Africa, asked them what do they think are the most significant pieces in their collections. And we received lists upon lists of works that they had considered. And I think at the end we had over 300 suggestions, which we had to, as an art committee, narrow down to 101. So it was a big process that we had to go through. So this was just some behind the scenes of how we sort of categorized those works, how they sort of fell off, what we decided, you know, how we should go ahead with it. Yeah, so in the end, we sort of had to come to categorize what we were going to select, because there was so much that we had to take into play. So these are just some of the categories that we thought of in terms of trying to select works out of the 300 plus that we had received from all over South Africa.
So you can see the categories written there, but from those categories, we also developed some themes, which hopefully is on the next slide. And those themes were fairly focused in the sense that we now were going to take the works that we had selected and put them together in talking to one another and looking at some of these elements which are on the screen at the moment. Next one, please, Shinaz. Okay, now this was the first work that arrived for installation. And it's, as you can see, an enormous piece. And it is a work by Alexis Preller, which had been commissioned during the apartheid era for the old Transvaal Provincial Administration building. It had been up on the 8th floor, very much out of public view, actually. And that building had been closed for many, many years. And nobody had seen this work for that period of time, if at all. So we installed this work on the wall behind, as you can see going up there. And the work was commissioned by the provincial administration, and this work by Alexis Preller was looking at what he considered to be an epic event, which had been sparked in his own imagination by at that time, the beginnings of the journey to the moon. And he decided he wanted to try to use a subject which at the time would have been that exploration going into unknown worlds. And it reflects the journey around the Horn of Africa to the east. That was basically what he was looking at.
So we'll see a full image of the Prela in a bit, but this is just sort of behind the scenes of how we actually got to put the show together. And once the work started arriving, doing the condition reports, the photography, setting up. So just some of the logistics that happened behind the 101. And yeah, here's a better image of the Prela.
So that is what you would see as you come through the front door of the Javett. You'd be through the foyer, and the juxtaposition of the works here was the interesting element of this curation process. This is a piece loaned from the Johannesburg Art Gallery called Dromedaris Donner en Anne Domdinge. The Dromedaris obviously relating to one of the ships of Jan van Riebeeck arriving on this continent, with this ethereal wire figure of the local inhabitants that they found there, with this power of guns in the sort of the colonization of Africa. And we juxtapose this with the Prela behind, showing his fanciful idea of what Africa would look like. And of course, the subject matter has its own element of contemporary debate and discussion, which is colonization, and in fact, post-colonization, which we are discussing in this juxtaposition as well. The next one, please, Shinaz. So that's a picture looking backwards towards the front door coming from the foyer on your left. And it shows three works. There's a Maggie Loebscher. There is the Arab priest, which we'll discuss in a moment. There is a Pierneef, and there's a Gladzy. I can never pronounce her name right.
Gladys Moklandlu, yes.
Moklandlu. So again, this begins to show you how we were putting works together, which either came from a particular period, but we're looking at some of the subjects which we had put up earlier on the screen. So there is at the top the full image of the Prela, showing the Portuguese on the left, the navigator, this fanciful idea of Africa and all its elements which Prela used in many of his works, and which in a way, this is an assemblage of many of those elements which he explored and looked at throughout his artistic career. There's the Arab priest at the bottom left, and this is a work which is on loan to us, but has a fascinating background. It was bought in Europe at Bonhams by the Qatar Museum of the Oriental Museum in Qatar, for at that time the highest price ever paid for a work by Irma Stern. That followed a process where, when they came to collect the work, they were politely told that it was in South Africa, and the South African government was not going to allow it to leave because SARA, the heritage agency, said it was a national treasure. Well, the result of that, after mediation and threats of all kind, was that it was allowed to be loaned to the Qatar Museum for 20 years. And it had to come back to South Africa every 5th year. And we were lucky to get this work last year, which was the 5th year. And then on the right, of course, is that magnificent piece of Sokoto, the Song of the Pick, which I'm sure everybody, or many people, would be familiar with, which with its underlying political comment, social comment, and the juxtaposition of those. A piece by Niels Coetzee, Crucible, which is a work with using steel rods, which in fact had been manufactured from the melted down AK-47s that were handed in to the police um, uh, and melted down into steel, which were then made into these rods. And we put that together in proximity with the work by Marco Cianfanelli on the right called Release. That is a maquette of the piece that is down at the capture site in just outside Howick in KZN, where those steel rods, the actual size of them at the capture site is between about 8 and 12 meters high. There are 50 of them, and you walk through them over 30 meter length. So we were juxtaposing those two, which worked, I think, quite well. This is a work, or two works. The top one is by Bertha Everard, Trees and Trenches of the Battlefield of Delville Wood. And this falls into that landscape category, but landscape isn't only there as a picturesque manifestation of a view that you were looking at, but that obviously has underlying elements to it, very powerful elements. And the bottom one is by Hilary Graham, and it is the narrative of the sinking of the Mende. So they were both First World War tragedies where many people died. And it was really also referring to the fact that the Mende wasn't terribly well known in South African history because these were black soldiers who were killed, who were drowned when their ship collided in the English Channel. And the top picture is of the South African battalion that went into Delville Wood and was completely wiped out at that time. Perhaps you want to talk to this, Shinaz?
Yes, so this is as you come up from the ground floor, you would be in the South 32 gallery. So the work on my left by Walter Altman was a commission that he's done for a Genco building. And this was donated to us by South 32. So it is a permanent installation that will be in that gallery space. And across from that is the Kaiskama Guernica and the Dumele Feni Guernica as well. That's from the University of Fort Hare. So that's, as you come up, what you will see in the Javett Art Center.
The Kaiskama project is an extraordinary project of women down in the Eastern Cape. It was originally set up as a project to assist the victims of HIV. And a really sad element to that work, which is obviously referring to the Picasso Guernica, are a number of little plaques right across the bottom with the names of some of the people who had died in the hospice, which was created by Carol, I always forget her name, her surname. Help me here, Shinaz.
I can't remember either.
I'm so sorry, Carol, if you're listening, I'll get it right in a minute. She's a wonderful woman, a medical doctor who in Kaiskama created this hospice and this amazing project of where these women create these extraordinary tapestries. And well, Hoffmeyer, thank you. I'm so sorry that I forgot.
Thank you so much, Kate Cohn-Briggs. Right.
Yeah, I apologize to Carol for that. And then you might want to comment on this, Shinaz.
So then we have our first floor gallery. So as you come up from the South 32 gallery, this is sort of the space that you would encounter. And here we sort of grouped works according to religious and cultural themes. So here we have Mbota's Commune Suspension of Disbelief, which is from the Johannesburg Art Gallery, was loaned to us by them. And in the background, you can see we've grouped portraits that we've received as well. We can go into more depth here. There's Andrew Mochwaudi's Head of a Child, which is, I believe on the cover of the Neglected Tradition, Christopher.
Correct.
And the Marianne Podleshuk Three Boys, which is also on the cover of the South African literature book, A Cry the Beloved Country. So these are some of the more interesting works that the public would be able to recognize as well from these things. And this is just going further into the first floor gallery. There's this work here by Joachim Schonfeld. And in the background, I will show you more for close-up. Yeah, so we have these Noria Mabasa, Rashada Krause, and Penny Siopis as well.
The Rashada Krause piece that you can see there was a commission for the Johannesburg Civic Theatre some years ago, and is obviously references Delacroix's piece that you can see with the Liberty Fraternité. But it is a composite collection of thespians, all of those people at the time who were involved in theatre, and you can quite easily recognize all of them. But it was, as I've said, originally a commission for the Civic Theatre. It was then bought back by the artist at a particular moment. It was on exhibition for some time at the Baxter Theatre, and it's been on exhibition at the Apartheid Museum for some time, and it's been loaned for this show.
Yeah, it's one of our more popular pieces as well, I think, with the public coming in, because they recognize a lot of the faces on the painting. So it's quite a popular piece that we have.
A piece by Helmut Starker, loaned from the National Gallery. Next one. And here, this is another, on the second floor, moving towards Boys High, which is behind those trees. So we are flanked at the back of the museum by the playing fields of Boys High. And you can sit on that bench and look out at the space. This is a work by Michael Goldberg, which is from Wits, and it's called Monument to a Migrant Worker, which is a piece that I remember very powerfully from the days when I first saw it at Wits in the Gertrude Posel Gallery before the new gallery was built. Next one. In that space, we also have a number of graphic works, mainly by artists who were trained at Rorke's Drift. There's also a tapestry from Rorke's Drift there. So it was also a tribute to those artists who came from that tradition. And here is a piece which is also on loan from WAM, a piece by Sam Ntlengethwa, which is obviously a reference to the death of Steve Biko, an extraordinarily powerful piece. We have a video room with 3 videos showing at the moment as part of that exhibition. This one by Kentridge is Felix,
yeah.
The Felix series, what was it called?
Felix in Exile.
Felix in Exile, correct. And then this is a gallery which is dedicated to exhibiting the initial spark of this entire process, which is the Javett family collection. This is a selection of that on exhibition as part of the opening shows. It was curated by Gabby Norbo, who made selections from that collection, the title of which is All in a Day's Eye, where she looks beyond the surface of the work into some of the historical context of these pieces from the perspective of a post-colonial view. The next slide is of Willem Boshoff's alphabet series. I think this was C, I think, and is on loan to us from MTN. The first time I saw this work was in a previous life at the Johannesburg Art Gallery, where we had the first one, on exhibit. The most extraordinary piece because it contains small sculptures in these boxes which refer to words in dictionaries, and those words refer to form. And on top of the box, which you can see these silver plates, is actually Braille. So a blind person can read the Braille, which describes the form in the box. The box can be opened and the blind person can feel that form. So in other words, we, the sighted, are unable to access the full context of that exhibition. It has to really be through the eyes called of blind people.
So that's the space, or the last level of the museum. And we sort of grouped more of our contemporary artists and their works in that connecting space that we call it for now. And some of the other works that are featured in that space is Norman Catherine, Zanele Moholi, and Stephen Cohen as well. And then from this space, we go into the Bridge Gallery, which is, yeah, across Linwood Road.
Yeah, so as you would walk into that space, you walk across the road. And the work on the right was loaned from the Constitutional Court, and it is by Judith Mason, The Blue Dress, and it refers to a hearing of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and that hearing actually is on film at the Apartheid Museum, part of it anyway, where the perpetrators of the murder of a young woman who they tortured, stripped naked and threw her into jail, and then called out to execute her in a remote spot. And she had tried to fashion some clothing out of plastic bags. A terrifying story. And when she was finally exhumed, of course, they found that the plastic together with the remains of this woman, and Judith Mason made this work commemorating her bravery through this piece called The Blue Dress. Then further down at the end, okay, that's fine. He has a work by Sibanda, and it is a piece which would be familiar, or a series which would be familiar to a number of you, I'm sure. And behind that is a work from the Johannesburg Gallery, The Triple Gates of Hell by Robert Hodgins. Again, an extraordinarily vibrant and important piece, as are some of the others in this gallery space, which you can see in subsequent slides. Bill Ainsley and Peter Schutz, and Albert Adams, a work called South Africa in 1959. Very powerful piece, obviously related to the tragedy of apartheid and the horror of apartheid, and stylistically, strangely enough, has echoes of the Guernica pieces which we showed you earlier on.
So this is just a list of all of the institutions and individuals that eventually participated and collaborated with us for this exhibition. It was, it was a very interesting task for us to see what they had thought would be the most significant pieces to represent their collections. And I think at the end of the day, for us, it was more about the collaboration as well. And it might also just be significant to mention what the 101 is for. Because initially we had thought we'd do 100 artworks because, that's a nice number and, something that would be quite popular. And in the end, we decided on 101 because it's used as something that is a beginner's course or a teaching moment. So, you get your, in university, a subject, it's like English 101 or History 101. And this was sort of our way of saying to the public that if you want to get your Art 101, this is the exhibition you need to see. So we have something from, diverse collections from across the country, what they think are significant and important in art history, in movements in art. And we're trying to bring that all together in one space for everyone to be introduced to. So it's, we wanted the exhibition to be accessible, for people not to feel intimidated by it. And this is really at the heart of the Javett, and our interest is in education. So for us, that was how we viewed the 101 exhibition and what our aim was for the show.
I think that the idea of working collaboratively with other institutions right across the country was also an energy which we responded to, and we found the response back incredibly powerful. And I think it also, at this moment, where these institutions are all closed, and many of these works which we have brought together were not even on display, they were mainly in storerooms. So to bring them together at a particular moment was a very special engagement with the art community and the art institutions, many of whom, even prior to the COVID pandemic, were in serious trouble because they have not been supported by state and city. And they have battled to survive. So you can imagine what it must be like now. I think that a new band of curators who have come into those institutions are mining those collections and recontextualizing them within a post-colonial discourse, which is interesting. We didn't do it quite that way, but we brought these pieces together for the reasons that Shinaz articulated earlier. Shinaz?
So this is also just some of what else we offer at the Javett UP. So there's obviously tours that we have and an extensive public programming lineup as well, which we are very active with and are now trying to move online as well. And then there's also just examples of some of the events or past events and workshops that we've had with kids, with musicians and performers at the Javett Art Center since our opening in September last year. We've also held events. We have specific spaces at the Javett that we use for venue hire. So we've been active in all of these elements since we've opened. And yeah, that's the end of our slideshow. I don't know, Christopher, if you want to conclude.
Yes, I think, again, coming back to the current situation and how art museums are trying to cope at this time. All of us have had to have a crash course on this kind of technology, and I must thank Strauss & Co. for doing this extraordinary series, because this is exactly what is needed in trying to engage with the public in a different manner. And we're getting better at it. And we are also obviously trying to look at our offerings, this kind of exhibition, discussions around individual works or themes, which we are beginning to put up online. Everybody's trying this. I mean, there's a tsunami of material, and I've read articles where people are kind of getting exhausted by how much stuff is out there. However, I must again compliment Strauss & Co. This is an extraordinary opportunity to gather an audience who seem genuinely interested and peel back the curtain, so to speak, and show what we hope you will be able to see in the flesh once more at a particular moment. I think, however, there is a lot of rethinking and rebooting and thinking out of the box as how institutions such as the Javett and others will be able to continue hereafter. But as you can see on the slide, home to the art of Africa, my art, my Africa, our art, it's at the heart of who we at the Javett are. And we would really looking forward to welcoming you back in the flesh. And this exhibition is likely to continue for some months yet until we are able to engage directly with you all again. But we would like to continue this kind of interaction on the various platforms that we are currently populating.
Well, Christopher, thank you. And Shanaz, thank you so much for joining us today. You know, I've got one or two just sort of observations and questions for you, if you don't mind, just as we wrap up. I suppose really first off, I think we have been quite spoilt today, because it feels like we've been given a whirl around the collections of all of our major institutions in the country. And you've managed to bring real keys and gems, key works and gems out of those collections, and put them under one roof. So really, I think the kind of focus that the sheer scale of the center presents has enabled you to do that. And I must just say it's really it's very tantalizing to want to go and have a look at that. I know definitely. I think it's going to bring a lot of foot traffic to Pretoria. But Christopher, I suppose a question for you, just in your experience in museums, because you and your background, I suppose, is that of a consummate museum professional. I'm just going to mute some of those things. So I beg your pardon. So what was in the conception of the and the production of the university itself? What were some of the issues and the experiences that you brought with you, and applying those lessons to the formation of the Javett Art Center?
Well, I think I came fortunate in having been tossed into various circumstances at various times on a plethora of projects, and both built projects and performance projects, the Biennale exhibitions, the Newtown Cultural Precinct, the Venice Biennale. That is a lucky foundation on which to bring to a new project. I think that the enthusiasm of a university to put their energies and their support into creating this independent body, and I think that the generosity of the Javett Foundation and Michael Javett in particular was a mix which had to succeed because of its scope, because of the individuals who come together to make it happen. And I just consider myself very fortunate to have been in the middle of all of that, and being able to reach a point in September where mercifully we managed to get to a moment of opening, and have had some months of engagement with the public. I think there's a little frustration, of course, at the moment in having to rethink in the way that we're rethinking now. But that frustration is also led by the kind of creativity that one generates and picks up along the way, and I've been lucky enough to share it.
Because no, it's quite interesting, I suppose, looking at a national at the scope of the Javett Art Center, both continentally and nationally. We've seen the emergence of a number of these initiatives that have come to support the our cultural and artistic infrastructure. So we've seen and it's funny. It's almost like it feels though in a, it's always difficult to historicize the contemporary moment, but it feels that we're almost on the cusp of starting to really engage with both the continental discourse of cultural production in Africa, as well as a more global discourse situating and positioning ourselves on the continent. I'm thinking about the emergence of the institutions like the Zeitsmoker, the Norval Foundation, who will be joining us next week on the 10th. As well as as well as now the Javett in the north. How do you, Christopher, see yourself in that kind of lineage and really flying the flag or advancing the cause of, as I said, our cultural production on the continent?
I think it's the collaboration that you speak of, and these new institutions, and the Javett, in the way that we've just constructed this exhibition. We see ourselves not like the other, or the new boys on the block or anything like that, but rather a catalytic influence, as some of the other institutions that you've described are beginning to contribute to. And if we, as a body of professionals, can continue with the kind of work that we're doing, and at the Javett, as I've said, at the heart of it is looking into the continent and beyond and back. If we are able to engage with one another in energizing that arena, as you are in this kind of programming we are partners in being able to look to that future and make it a reality. And I want to thank my colleagues, and you saw there were 64 groupings there that we had. And I see a couple of them are listening in on this little program now. But I want to thank you all, because it's that collaborative effort that really counts. We obviously at the Javett want to wave the flag as high as we possibly can, and we would of course like to become the default institution where people come to when they come to Africa. But all of us want to do that. But we certainly have a tremendous opportunity being linked into a university that gives us a massive store of knowledge, of research, of academic input. But we're never going to lose the fact that we have one foot in the street. We want to, as we said earlier on, demystify the museum experience. So we want to strike the balance of being built on a very powerful academic foundation, but we want to be a welcoming institution to bring people who wouldn't dream of coming into an art institution or have anything to do with art into this space, which in fact you're doing virtually right now.
It's just fascinating having a look at yesterday we gave a talk, and Christopher, actually your name came up as the curator of the South African Pavilion in Venice. But I think what we've been starting to see is this kind of emerging narrative of around these artists and artworks that we are starting to reposition our understanding of South African art history, and it's so interesting to, I suppose, see the parallels between the marketplace, what our museums are doing, as well as how our contemporary artists are reacting to these their presence on these kinds of platforms and in these kinds of institutions. And I think the Javett under a microscope has managed to, I suppose, just from my impressions from this talk, has managed to capture this amazing petri dish of bustling creativity, which is really fascinating. So, Christopher and Shanaz, that has been really wonderful to have you. And as I've mentioned, I'm sure this is not the last time that the Javett Art Center at the University of Pretoria is going to be gracing Strauss's Zoom Strauss's Zoom channel. Well, I think, you know, with such a wealth of subject matter, you know, I think down the line in our museum moments, we can really look to bring works to life. And one of the sort of impetuses that we've that Zoom has allowed us to do is to stop and focus on artworks and look at the cataloging and the narratives and the stories and the histories that they come with, and bring those works to life. And I think this afternoon was the beginning of that process with the Javett Art Center. So again, I just want to say on behalf of Strauss & Company, thank you so very much to the both of you for giving us your time this afternoon. Quickly, just remind our viewers where you are and who you are, where we can find you, and perhaps some of the utilities on the websites that they can go and have a look at, Shanaz.
So we are active on social media. So we have a Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram page, which is @JavettUP. So you can find us there. Our physical address is in Linwood, 23 Linwood Road in Pretoria. So once we are operational again, everyone is more than welcome to come to the center. And then our website, obviously on the screen, javettup.art. And we've got all of the information regarding entrance, physical address, if you want to contact us, and our exhibitions, current exhibitions that are on show, and our public programs as well. We also advertise that on our social media pages, so please do follow us on there.
Fantastic. And just some notes. We've got some enormous praise and thanks coming in for the talk today. So just a shout out to Alison, who's I think might be with the Javett staff. We've got Marilyn. I think that might be Marilyn Martin. Thank you so much, Marilyn, for coming along. Cecile Blevely is appealing for the show to please stay open a little bit longer. Diana is saying thank you to Christopher and your team. We've again got Anne-Marie Burry saying thank you so much, and Cass Prinsloo, Ken Briggs, Kulazini series from is also is sending a shout out. So thank you so much, Guns and to let you know, ladies and gentlemen, we've had 2 weeks of Zoom programming, and I wanted to keep the principle live, so you've got to catch it, and that keeps our audiences coming back. But I have been recording this afternoon, and these recordings will be available on our YouTube channel as of either later this evening or for the rest of the week. So those will be archived and available to the public for anybody that joined us late or missed anything. So please keep an eye out for our programming. Next week we'll be running a three-part program next week. And finally, again, on behalf of Strauss & Company, I'd just like to say thank you so much to Shanaz Mohammed and Christopher Till of the Javett Art Center at the University of Pretoria, and they were joining us for our museum moments and at Strauss & Co. So thank you very much again for joining us. And
thank you, Matthew.
Good night.
Thank you, Matthew.
Super.
Thanks everybody for coming.
Quickly, there's just to see if there's oh no, that's people just asking about the program. Right, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, again, and have a good night and stay safe. Bye-bye.